All right, here we go. I'm gonna let everyone in.
I'm a better behind the scenes person.
I'm sure you're gonna do fabulous. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Benefits of Industry Community. My name is Jen Myers, and I will be the moderator for this session. Before we begin, I'd just like to touch on a couple things. First, I'd like to thank Thursday's presenting sponsor, Hopsteiner, and then Thursday's session sponsors, Stonebuilt Insurance Agency, BSG Craft Brewing, and DK Advanced Technologies. Thank you so much to our allies. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to produce this virtual conference for you all. So big kudos to you guys. I will be posting several links in chat. If you missed anything or have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via email or chat. Happy to share anything with you guys. And then also, if you could sign our attendee sign-in sheet, which I'll post in chat here soon. We're trying to keep track of everyone who's attending the sessions. And before we begin, if you can just keep yourselves on mute unless you have a question. If you do have a question, go ahead and put it in chat, and we'll be happy to call on you when it's an appropriate time. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our two presenters, Eric Garrity and Chris Spinelli. Eric, a little bit about Eric. Years before Eric had even heard of the New York Farm Brewery bill that was tied to a burgeoning craft beverage industry to local agriculture suppliers, he was active in the anti-fracking movement. Sing Sing Kill Brewery is a reflection of Eric's love of craft beer, entrepreneurial spirit, and environmental stewardship. Beyond the brewery, Eric continues to work with, how do you say it, Eric? IOTC?
IOTC.
Yeah, thank you. Local 52 Grip in Film and TV, raise two sons, and be an active member in the local political scene along with his wife. Also, Sing Sing Kill Brewery is one of 3 recipients of the ABS Commercial Scholarship. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
And then next, I'd like to introduce Chris Spinelli. Chris is the co-founder and CEO of Rock Brewing, located in Rochester, New York. Rock Brewing opened in 2011 with a small 1-barrel system brew pub, and its flagships were contracted. In 2014, Rock scaled up to a 7-barrel brew house with all production in-house and now employs 10 people with canning and draft accounts in 5 cities across New York State. Locally, Chris helped found the 585 Brewers Group, which is a monthly meeting of local brewers building a community through common experience. He has worked with the wine.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to keep going?
Nope, go ahead.
Almost done. He has worked with the New York Kitchen to help build and promote New York State beers at the center. In 2020, Rock Brewing teamed up with FLX Winery to expand its taproom experience. Rock Brewing continues to be a leader and promoter of New York State craft beer in its community, especially in Rochester. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And so right now we're going to lead it over to Eric, who's going to talk about the benefits of industry community. Go ahead, Eric.
All right. Thank you very much. I feel honored to be here as a panelist in an industry that I revere and invited to do so by an association that I have such great admiration for. My day job is as a local 52 rigging grip. When I joined the union in 2001, another grip took me aside and told me to keep my mouth shut. Said, don't say anything for 5 years. Not quite sure where that timeline came from in his mind, but he was right. At the 5-year mark, almost exactly to the date, I found my voice in that industry. So here I am only 3 years into operating a brewery and opening my mouth. So it's intimidating to speak to a group of peers that have more experience than I do and have helped pave the way for all of our successes. So cheers to you all, and my offering at saying something without the 5-year wait. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the New York Brewers Association, the board and staff for all the great work they've done to advocate and collaborate and communicate with us. and help the industry stay safe and healthy throughout the pandemic. So thank you all. What's happening? Oh no, it doesn't advance. How do I get it to advance?
Do you have a play button? There you go.
All right. I guess the arrow keys aren't working now. So this has been an incredibly difficult time for us all, physically, mentally, and financially. We are, for the first time, experiencing a pandemic economy, which, as it turns out, is incredibly supportive to small businesses. The plight of the small business owner is no longer just something that people pay lip service to in the form of some heartwarming Amex marketing campaign. People are truly passionate and energized, and they're on a mission to save small businesses, and they recognize our interconnectedness. So at Sing Sing Kill Brewery, our goals are twofold: to work with the local business community to help strengthen our local economy, as well as to work with our local leaders to utilize their desire to support us and turn that into practical action. So I'm going to share some experiences of how Sing Sing Kill Brewery adopted the values held by the craft beer industry of cooperation and collaboration, and incorporated those practices into our relationships with other local businesses, as well as community leaders that, although not within our industry, I would consider industry adjacent. One of the big initiatives we undertook in 2019 was the Big House Barbecue, food, beer, and music festival. Typical brewery type of event, an obvious choice because it's something that we're familiar with and accustomed to. We pour beer out on location at festivals, probably alongside many of you. Our tap room is also a music venue, so we had built relationships with several local artists, and not having a kitchen in our tap room, we partner a lot with other local restaurants for food programming in the tap room. So working so closely with all these different entities with different experiences and expertise, we came to realize why breweries tend to excel in these type of events. There's, just from a logistical perspective, the amount of permits required from the state liquor authority, the county department of health, several municipal event permits, as well as insurance certificate, workers' compensation, liquor liability, and having enough staff on hand that are experienced with events and are event minded. So we were able to provide this brewery industry know-how to the local business community and do it in a way that was not motivated by profiting off of the vendors themselves. We decided to use the beer sales to help offset the cost of the festival in order to lower the vendor fees and guarantee that participation would yield profits. This, as it turns out, was in stark contrast to the approach taken by local chamber of commerce and nonprofits that use such events as fundraisers for their organizations. The event turned out to be an awesome day for our community and led to two important lasting results: the Ossining Business Alliance and a new village event policy. So the Ossining Business Alliance came out of the Big House Barbecue, and in this slide are the founders who were the original vendors at the festival. Our local chamber of commerce wasn't really reflecting the needs and experiences of the local retail businesses. So the OBA was formed and is currently just a group of brick and mortar businesses. But unfortunately, the pandemic kind of cut us short, and we were about to open it to a greater number of businesses in all types of varieties. But we expect that this spring we'll start opening it up again. And the point is, we were having regular meetings to share information, creating initiatives that we could partner through collaboration, and also doing a lot of cross promotion. This was also allowed our voices to be amplified through our interactions with local government. So our village started turning to us for insight on local decision making. For example, a big undertaking was the village's new comprehensive plan was being updated. So they sought the representation from the OBA for their subcommittee of stakeholders on local economy. In addition to amplifying our communal voice to affect future policy, as a direct result of this specific event, we were also able to reshape our village's event policy. So the experience of holding the Big House Barbecue unfortunately brought to light a lot of contradictory local laws, as well as inconsistent application of those laws, which for the most part really prevented our local business community from taking on and attempting to create these large festival-like events. So it really kind of cleared up the process so that more structured events can occur within our community, and we could all better support one another in that way. I also encourage you to get to know your elected officials and know that they like to hear from you. They realize that most people don't necessarily travel across state lines to seek out a bar or restaurant like they would a brewery. And brewery culture, as we know, is a collaborative practice that unifies us. Introducing and instilling those values in our local business community is something that we are uniquely positioned to provide. And it's a powerful tool that we have to offer, combined with the fact that beer tourism is real, gives us a greater ability to influence local and state policy. So please get to know your elected officials and make it easy for them to help you succeed. There are so many reasons to engage with elected representation at all levels of state government. Obviously, the SLA is the most common interface we have with a state agency, but it doesn't have to stop there. I know that many business owners are reluctant to get involved in politics. That's never been the case for us. But we have also found many non-political opportunities to establish relationships with elected officials as well. For instance, the New York Farm Brewery license, that was a great piece of legislation that was the first impetus for us engaging with our local elected officials proactively. So in the interest of full disclosure, the reason I am so comfortable and familiar around this topic is that my wife is a former mayor of Ossining. She recently left office to earn a living wage and now is working for the New York State Senator. She and I are both active in our Democratic committee. This slide is of election night 2018, and pictured here are the chairwoman of our Democratic committee, our town supervisor, and our assemblywoman. starting a business with your wife as the mayor is a double-edged sword. It means you can't get away with anything because all eyes are constantly on you. But there are benefits. Besides everyone looking for that salacious story of corruption, you do have a great knowledge base for who does what and why, and how to approach the appropriate person to get the results that you're looking for. So I certainly wouldn't recommend having a wife as a mayor, but it does have certain upsides. Also know that it's important to get officials into your space, and they generally love the opportunity to be in a brewery. You don't necessarily need an ask in order to do so. Politicians get attacked all the time, so just some sort of like feel-good photo op is a nice welcome change of pace. We regularly hold events, or used to regularly hold events. This is the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County holding their pub talk on food insecurity, climate change, and agriculture in our tap room. What better place to do that than in New York Farm Brewery? That event drew Senator Carlucci, Assemblywoman Galiff, as well as several county and municipal officials. We wound up even doing a hybrid version of that the following year in 2020. So just recently, our newly elected state senator has invited us to join a small business policy council. So we're being tasked with weighing in on important policy issues, helping to suggest legislation, and informing the senator of small business concerns within the district. Currently, we are proposing 2 legislative actions to eliminate unfair practices that present arbitrary obstacles to small businesses and will ultimately stifle post-pandemic economic recovery. The first one is to eliminate the New York State mandated gender discrimination in disability insurance, which currently is encouraging businesses to hire men over women by charging them more than double to do so. The other is to end a workers' compensation insurance practice of charging employers at the highest risk classification annually per employee, no matter the amount of hours spent per year working at that risk level. So now is probably more of a critical time than ever as we look to rebuild our economy and reimagine our methodology. People are going to be looking for those that will lead the way. This industry has proven itself capable, and I expect we will all be playing a large role in contributing to our state's recovery and moving New York forward. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. If anyone has any questions, feel free to use the raise your hand button or place it. Glenn, you have a question? Glenn?
Yep, I'm here.
All right.
All right, Eric, thank you. I'm just curious, what became of your local chamber, and is it still happening? And are you guys working together? What's that relationship like?
It's not a great relationship, honestly. It's just they haven't really been serving our community, and people have moved away from them to a large degree. So this kind of filled a void. They do still exist, but they don't really have a brick and mortar contingent.
Yeah. And do your other neighboring small businesses, have they caught on that it's a good idea to engage with their local government? Was that news to them, or did you kind of help them see the light?
It's certainly, you know, took some doing. They, you know, most people, when elections occur every 2 years, so there's a lot of turnover, and sometimes, you know, people can be spiteful, and if you support someone or you know, we're lucky. Well, kind of lucky, but we only have a one-party town, so the Democrats have been in power for forever, and there's like the Republicans don't even run anybody, so it's not like a Republican Democrat situation, but it does create a lot of inter-party conflict. So it becomes, instead of, you know, one party versus the other, it becomes personality versus the other, and so you know, it is difficult. Like, people set up camps, and you know, this is, you know, a comfortable space for some and not for others. But what we're trying to do is get people just to, like, generally become more active, so that you know, our concerns are being heard. And you know, it's just, you know, information really. If someone isn't going to our leaders and, you know, expressing what our needs are, then they don't know, because we, you know, Trump aside, we live in a world where, you know, on a local level, they don't like politics and business, you know, combining. They feel like it encourages corruption. But what happens is, more and more, our elected officials are less aware of the business community's needs and wants. So there, you know, there has to be a constant dialogue.
All right. I was a trustee for 8 years up here in a town south of Rochester, so I totally dialed in when you talked about your background.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks.
I had a question for you. You talked about the barbecue event that you guys did. Do you do any smaller type events to help bring business to different businesses in your town?
Yeah, well, we used to do, you know, obviously, like, so much is on hold right now, but we used to on a lot of days, restaurants are closed, so we would bring those restaurants in here, like, you know, Sundays and you know, various times where we weren't going to pull business away from local restaurants, but we would bring a restaurant in here and kind of showcase them in the tap room. And we also, you know, do a lot of stuff with, you know, Earth Day festivals and, you know, various other things. I mean, it was kind of our calendar was always filled with ways to just, like, you know, keep everything, you know, bouncing off one another, and everything we did, we tried to bring as many, you know, organizations into the fold. And we've even, you know, the local arts community, you know, doing, you know, live interactive art shows and stuff like that. So, you know, people, you know, quickly became aware of we were in a space that encourages this kind of collaboration. So the more and more we were doing it, the more and more organizations and businesses, you know, came to us with new ideas, and it was just like, it was fantastic. And I can't wait to get back to that level of engagement again.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Eric. I'm sure if anybody has any questions, we'll take them throughout. I'm sure we'll have time at the end. So thank you again. And I'm going to head it over to you, Chris. You're going to have to close out, Eric. Stop, do the stop. Perfect. Thank you.
Great. All righty. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the New York State Brewers Association and all the hard work you guys have been doing. I know how much you guys put in, and we really appreciate it. And Eric, thank you for your information, and that presentation was great. So my journey and what I'm going to talk about is a little more on the social community that we create as brewers. For me, community has always played a huge, important role for me in what I do and how I get to interact in the beer scene. You know, some of you may know, some of you may not know, but you know, it's crazy how much this industry has changed over the years, from roughly a couple hundred breweries initially when it started and a bunch of small home brewers working together to refine their skills to where we stand today with over 8,500 breweries in America, 465 plus in New York State, which wasn't always the case. And, you know, now we see all the great work that the National Brewers Association does and the New York State Brewers Association does, but that wasn't there before. And it took a lot of community building within the community, within craft beer, to really build and hone all the success that we see today. And, you know, my journey really kind of started with a couple pioneers in the industry and how they helped me and really helped show me what importance was needed in creating those communities and then sharing that knowledge and support. In the pictures here, I have my good friend John Erlob, who is the founder of Roarbox Brewing Company and one of the pioneers here in Rochester, New York. They opened up in 1991 and was the first microbrewery in downtown Rochester. John has really always been there, and he really has been a mentor for me. He helped us kind of launch our business, was our original contractor, and to this day still reaches out for support regularly to help guide me as I move my business forward and our community. In the other picture is Jim Cook from Boston Beer Company, who I've had the pleasure of working with in a mentorship program over the years through Brewing the American Dream. And these two men have always opened their doors to me and really given me the opportunity to grow and learn and take their knowledge and apply it to my business, and then ultimately be able to share that knowledge on. And I think that's important that we remember that community is built on more than just where we're at today and where we're going tomorrow, but there is a collective of brewers out there who have a ton of knowledge and history that can really help us as we navigate this industry, especially considering that we have hit a point where we have so many breweries. We are in a major transition time with the pandemic, and where do we go next as an industry? It is always good to look back at the people who have really supported us. So creating a community, what really kind of got me on my journey ultimately now to be a board member for the New York State Brewers Association was this community of all these crazy people here in Rochester. So back in 2014, Rock Brewing was going through quite the transition. We had a big change in management, change in our brewer, change in our brewing equipment, and we found ourselves from being one of the first breweries with a tap room downtown Rochester to one of 6 breweries in downtown Rochester, with another 6 more coming on over the next couple of years, and really having to reinvent ourselves and find where we fit in that community, but more importantly, what is this community? And we were able to really, as most of these stories start, over a pint at the brewery, kind of navigate our way into what is this crazy collective of photos, and we call the 585 Brewers. Back in 2014, 2015, we started to meet up with some of the local breweries, including Genesee, Swiftwater, Stoneyard, and simply, let's have a pint. Let's meet at each other's breweries. Let's talk and see what that creates and who knows what will happen. And ultimately, we found that there was a big need for that community building and sense of together. Little did we know that that community would lead into Genesee really taking with it and running and opening up their doors to resources for their labs, attribute training, knowledge sharing, equipment sharing, to the point where we went from a ragtag of, a few handful of breweries up to about 40 breweries in the greater Rochester area, meeting on a monthly basis, hosting each other at different breweries. And ultimately now it's shared resources, shared knowledge, shared engagement, to the point where even this past week, we were struggling with yeast and couldn't get our supplier, sent out an emergency email, and 3 breweries came back to us within 20 minutes. I've got the yeast for you, swing on over with a brink. So we didn't know that we were setting out to create something special, but ultimately we did. And it is proven a great resource for our community that has gone from a few breweries in downtown Rochester to now 13 by the end of this year, upwards of 30 in Monroe County. And this rising tide mentality of quality, knowledge, experience that has really built a community that now we see quite the interaction on both a local, regional, state, and somewhat of a national level of interaction, and especially press, media, and tourism that the city itself hasn't ignored. So, we thought, hey, let's get together and have a couple beers, but it turned into something so much more. And I know during these challenging times that many of these brewers have reached out to each other, supported each other, even through a distance, to get through the fact that we can't see each other, that we can't have the normal interactions, but it has been a great support system for all of us. So that ultimately led to me getting more involved on a state level. John Orlob actually was a big push for this, and a number of the 585 brewers, when a seat came up for the New York State Brewers Association for the West Central, I kind of mentioned that I thought I wanted to run, and I got a huge amount of community support that they said, you have a voice that speaks for us in our community, and we think you could be a great role there. And that's where I went. And ultimately, I won that year, and I'm in my second term right now. And it has been an amazing experience to work with the New York State Brewers Association board. These are amazing brewers that work very hard to help educate, promote, and protect our industry. And, on a state level, we do so much, from obviously the conference to our competition to, most importantly, we do a lot of lobbying, and it's a really active board that is constantly changing. As you can see, the seats rotate every year. At least 3 regions are up for a 3-year term. So if you're interested, please get involved. Reach out to your current members, or get involved on committees. It's a great resource. We're always looking for more help, especially when hopefully next year we'll be able to go back to Albany for Lobby Day. It's a great experience too, and something that Eric talked about, that people aren't always comfortable getting involved in politics. The best part about Lobby Day is most of the state assembly and Senate are excited to see us. At the end of the day, we're talking about beer. We're not complaining. We're thanking them for what they've done for us. We're encouraging them with our numbers, with our job creation. And they really do look forward to seeing us and talking with us and learning how our industry directly affects the state. And it can be a great experience. I can remember the first year I went, I was quite nervous. But ultimately now I look forward to it, and the experience in hosting senators and assembly people at our brewery. They really do look forward to the community that we've created. They enjoy our energy. They enjoy what we do. And, we have to strike on that, keep going with that. And the New York State Brewers Association is a great form of how we do that on a state level. And a lot of that comes back to ultimately how I got involved with having a couple beers with friends at our brewery, And thus, a lot of people got started probably in this industry with over a couple of beers with friends and say, hey, let's make some. So please reach out to your local community, reach out to your board members. We're a resource for you. And, on that, I'm looking back at 10 years now of being in the craft beer industry. It is a very humbling experience this year to think of all the experiences that I've been fortunate to have. And at the heart of it has always been community. Everyone in these photos are close friends, some family, everyone on the board over the years have all significantly contributed in many ways, from just a simple how are you doing to where's your business at, keep pushing forward, or oh, have you thought of this idea, really has changed what we've done. And I contribute that to our success and being able to say that we're going to celebrate 10 years this year. We're going to come out of a pandemic with an expansion, took a risk, but again, I leaned on my community, and all these people really have helped. And without them, I don't think our industry, the Rochester community, the New York State beer community would be quite the same if we didn't have this building block of true friendship, true support that every day can play a key role in the smallest things, like, hey, I miss you, it's great to see you, to, oh, your filter went down, here you go. I've got 3 other people, we'll bring one over, we'll help you out. That's really what we've learned, is that this community is so vital to everything we do, that leads to the state level, which leads to a national level, and ultimately creates what is a very powerhouse community, that industry that drives economics. And we all know our policymakers love economics. So, I'm just lucky to be here. I'm honored to be on the board, honored to help out, and love my community, and hopefully can help spread what is 585 Brewers to every zip code in New York State. And thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. So we have about 15 minutes, no, actually 20 minutes left for questions. So if anybody has any, go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm going to start off because I'm curious from both Chris and Eric. Any advice on how you would suggest creating a community support, like the both you in your industry, in more rural areas?
We kind of got started, obviously, being so urban, it was easier to pull together. But even from there, some of our initial members of the 585 Brewers were from some of the Finger Lakes and up in Canandaigua that didn't have as many breweries around them. I think the biggest thing we did was just open it up and reach out to each other and said, how can I help? Or, hey, let's have a beer. It's not always easy over distance, but I think if we're open and willing to make that time for each other, you never know what's going to happen.
I think you just increase your radius, when you get farther out.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm just curious, like Ethan, George, do you guys have anything like this in your community? Do you guys have that type of community support and local government support?
Yes and no. What I admire about what Chris did with his group was the utter lack of organizing it, other than let's get together every month. What we have or had, it's not really clear right now, in Buffalo was a guild or a sub guild or whatever. And it had something like an executive director, only the guy was, well, anyway, enough said. And and it fell out of the hands of the brewers, and it fell out of being a joyful thing. So it was dissolved, and if a pandemic hadn't hit around the same time, more or less, we might have its replacement more in place, and we might have more to say about the story in progress. But unfortunately, whatever is up next is still kind of up next, because if we can't get together and hold events and stuff.
Yeah,
and
Ethan, I learned from you guys and made sure that it was
Yeah.
just fun drinking.
Well, in our defense, sort of, none of us had time to organize,
Right.
and we thought that was the way. So for Mr. Willard to step in and do all that, at first seemed really sort of more like a blessing than a curse. But as time went on, that changed. So yeah, if I had it to do over, I would have just gone for a relentless once a month, always meeting. But early on, there weren't really quite enough of us, right? There was only like 6 of us, or 3 or 4, right? And so at that time, we did try. We actually really tried to have just a rotating brewers jam, just hang out and meet. But like, it was there weren't enough of us to keep the mass rolling. There was always the same 6 or 8 of us. And we were like, yeah, I saw you last month. So until you can get like 30 people, of which some subset of 10 reliably show up, I think that's what it really kind of maybe takes.
Yeah. I think we were fortunate at the time that I needed community, and I needed community support as we reinvented ourselves. That kind of led to really good friendships of that group of 8 or 10 that really kind of consistently showed up and took the ball. You're right. It really does take a community to make that consistently work.
Do you guys ever expand your invitations to industries outside of the brewing? Like Chris, for instance, when you have people come once a month, do you ever invite other industries? And Eric, do you ever do something similar what Chris does with other industries, since you're more relatively working with them?
Well, if I understand the question, do we constantly reach out to various organizations, or?
Do you do like monthly get-togethers with
Yes, we had been doing that, and we tried to do it virtually, and it didn't really, because the problem is we were all so burdened by the constant changing of the regulations at the beginning, that we were all scrambling. And so like it just basically became a text chain and an email chain of like, when the next, round of PPP, and how to do the EIDL. And so it just became a constant, like, hey, there's this opportunity, this is going on. And it's only started to really become about the future and what we want to see happen, and how we can start joining forces again. The Super Bowl was another initiative. We provided the beer for a local restaurant who was doing a to-go package, and it's starting to come back again. You can sense it. You can really feel the level of interest in people engaging again. But it really was put on hold for the most part. We were about to engage a whole different group of not just bars and restaurants, but theater companies and yoga studios and fitness centers and stuff like that. We're like clamoring to join the organization, and we were about to do that, and then it just all kind of fell apart. But prior to that, we were meeting every month at some other business's location, and it was a fantastic wealth of information being shared. But it just didn't. It probably could have worked over Zoom. It's just that, you know, when you physically get together with people and schedule that, people will take the time. When you don't have that anymore, and you're trying to organize a Zoom and say, like, when can everyone be available? It keeps on getting kicked down the road because everything else comes up, and there's not the same level of commitment to it.
Yeah, we had we did allow for a little while there some outside businesses to come in and interact with us, and from some insurance to some of the city started coming, and a few other things like Visit Rochester. And you know, at first it was definitely some synergies there, but you know, at the end of the day, it wasn't always the brewery owners that were there. It was a lot more the brewers. And so we decided right before the pandemic to kind of cut that back. And a lot of that came from, you know, being on the board. We have an outlet. We have that outlet, and that's something I've always like said about 585. This isn't a, you know, a lobbying group. This isn't a guild. Like, this is brewers, right? You want that. We have a state organized Brewers Association. That's where you need to go. That's where that information is. If you want to interact and sell insurance or policy, the Brewers Association is that unified voice for the state. So ultimately, we kicked it back to just brewers, and even to the point where I stepped back from being the lead person on organizing meetings, because, you know, I don't mind meeting with the city of Rochester. I love meeting with them and helping them and organize whatever kind of growth they're trying to see in our industry, or Visit Rochester, helping them out. But I try to do that on a board level or as my own business level, because I think it's really important that it's just the brewers have their own outlet. They have this spot where they can get together, they can let loose, they can let their guard down, and learn from each other. And so we pulled it back mainly because of what I learned with the Brewers Association of we have that role, and here's where that is. But this community that we created is over here for that community and for that purpose, specifically to be together, to learn from each other, to drink and feel relaxed in our community.
Awesome. And what type of collaborations came out of this by both of your community building experiences?
I mean, we've done collaborations with a large portion of the breweries, and like would gladly do a collaboration with any one of the breweries in 585, especially now coming out of the pandemic. You know, we did one once at Genesee with 10 of the original 585 founders, and you know, that was really cool to do a brew at Genesee. But like, we're constantly working together.
I'm thinking of something in particular that you produce yearly that's huge, that probably grew out of the 585, and that's your Crema. What is it?
The celebration of Crema.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something that I hold near and dear, and we're desperately waiting to bring it back. Obviously, Rochester is known for the Crema. So we did an event a few years back where we invited 11 local breweries. We bought a keg of their Crema, put it on, and when it kicked, the next one went on. First year, we kicked it all by 7 o'clock. Next year, we added 22 breweries, kicked it all by 7 o'clock. We were gonna do 35 this year. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, there's just no way. We were starting to reach out into Buffalo, Ithaca, to really celebrate something that I think is near and dear to us in Rochester. But I think we're gonna have to wait until we can do this right and really make it the exciting event where all the brewers show up. They don't have to work, they don't have to pour any beer. We take care of all. They just got to hang out and have a good time. So that is definitely something special that I miss.
What about you, Eric? I know you did the big event with the barbecue. Is there anything else that's came out of this that has, made you guys come back to it year after year, or think, but obviously with the pandemic, hope to come back to it every year?
We're always working to support one another, and our, like, we joined forces more out of a desperation. There aren't a lot of businesses that survive in our downtown. We're not we could be technically a city by population, but most of the jobs are away. So, there's a sucking sound of everyone waking up in the morning and leaving. And it's not a recipe for success when it comes to restaurants being able to have a lunch crowd or anything like that. And then when people come home and they commute from the train, or they just want to get home to their families, and it's hard to get people out. So it was an effort to see, like, how can we increase foot traffic in our downtown? Like, what can we do to work together to show people, like, there's a contingent that hangs out at the coffee house, there's a contingent that hangs out at the brewery. Like, how about encouraging people to do both? Using our beer at Brothers Fish and Chips for his beer batter, and doing those kind of cross promotions constantly, and anything at all we could do. It was much easier to do prior pandemic, but there was this, like, just constant communication about, like, what artist is showing at what spot, and how we're gonna tie the things in together. Making sure that we even communicate, like, what bands are playing where and when, and not have art openings on the same days and stuff like that. Just kind of knowing what's going on with each other, and supporting each other through social media to a large degree. But now it's more about, like, what are you doing about rent, and how are you renegotiating, and what's going on that end. So it's just this ability for us all to have a safe, like, open and honest place to communicate with one another, that we know we're not trying to take advantage and use this information against each other, but to offer whatever resources we can. So it's been incredibly valuable, but I hope that it transitions back into more of a fun sort of creative outlet, rather than and oh shit, like, how do we do this?
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. George, you had a question?
Well, not necessarily a question, but I wanted to add to the discussion a little bit. I think this fits in fairly well with our local beverage trail. So couple year or two back, a lot of the Canandaigua area breweries were a little bit geographically separated from Rochester downtown. So we weren't none of us were really as involved in the 585 group, but we were all supportive of each other, obviously. We got pulled into the Rochester Finger Lakes Craft Beverage Trail that was forming as well. So we had started our own meetings, and we kind of melded into the beginnings of this craft beverage trail, which expands beyond even just breweries. It's the craft cideries, wineries, distilleries, and we've really found some nice synergies there as well, working together. Last year we had we called it the First Fest, which was a festival that was celebrated all of us, and we had a bunch of restaurants giving samples as well as the beverages. And even just recently, yesterday, I was on a Zoom call with the Craft Beverage Trail, and there was some discussions on some of the new guidance that came out for events and weddings. And we personally aren't a wedding, an event space for our brewery, but there's enough of these places within the trail that are all trying to interpret this confusing set of regulations and guidances that we were kind of trying to work together across our facilities to try to get some commonality of how we interpret it, how we implement it. So I think even things like that, there's some opportunities, like you were saying, outside of the breweries. I think there's a lot of good information out there, a lot of good perspective that if we're able to find those types of communities and trails that we can build off each other as well.
Awesome. Thanks, George. We just have a few more minutes, but before we close, I kind of have a question for everybody on here. And more or less, I'm just curious, what is your favorite thing about our community, in our industry? Is it the collaboration? Is it the knowledge sharing? Is it the support?
It's Paul.
George, it's Chris, it's Eric, it's who it is. Everybody else on this.
Listen, it's really Jen, Chloe, and Megan to make Paul look great.
Chris knows the secret.
Yeah, you got a point there, Chris.
I just gotta say, when we had the initial idea to open up a brewery, there were 14 New York Farm Brewery licenses in existence, and we contacted all of them, and 7 responded. And Matt and I went on a road trip across New York State, visiting those 7 breweries. And the fact that you could walk in and say, this is what we were thinking, this was our plan, and they told you, basically the question was, what do you think you've done right and what would you change? And everyone was like so incredibly open and helpful. And I was living in New York City at the time, not too far from Big Alice. And so I would stop in there, and those guys, took us under their wing and, really helped us through a lot of things. And so it was just such an incredible experience to be in an industry that really just, values participation and, is happy to talk. And there's no, feeling of competition, and hopefully that will remain.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Not exactly how this group started.
I think it worked out though.
I'm glad it's like this now.
That sounds like a happy hour story sometime,
Yeah.
Chris. Yeah.
Oh, it's a good story. It gets longer as the years get farther apart.
Chris, when did Lake Placid open?
We started construction in 95 and opened in 96. And I think we were number 9 in New York State. We might have even been the first MI license. I think that David had opened just before us, and I think John Erlob in Rochester was around then. There were a few that may have been, maybe we were the 3rd microbrew license, but it was.
I think Buffalo Brew Pub might be the first microbrewery permit.
Yeah, it was
restaurant brewing permit.
Yeah.
Warbox was definitely the pub restaurant, I think, first, the brewery restaurant.
Yeah. It was back. It was a long time ago, and it was when all of us got together at the horticultural building, which used to have the Brewers Festival the Saturday before the Super Bowl, and it started with about 3 or 4 of us around a picnic table, and it's come a long way.
Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you for helping build this community. I know Paul and I say, and Chloe too, when we travel, we're always blown away with the support this industry has for everyone in it. And it's always such a beautiful thing to see, and it never gets old. Every time we walk into a brewery, it's always, we're welcomed, and it doesn't matter. Even before I worked with the NYSBA, even as a brewer, you know, it was still, people would welcome you with open arms and be excited to share conversations and knowledge and stories. And you just don't get that, I think, in other industries. So it's such a beautiful thing.
I think we still have very much the us versus them mentality. And I'm not sure who us is and I'm not sure who them are, but I still think that there's that still, like, we need to band together and you know, maybe we're 15 out of 100 cases of beer still. So we still are so small, and we need to help each other. And I know that, you know, when we go into, we still have enough taps to pick on without picking on each other. And we certainly would pick on even out of state craft before we would pick on New York craft. Like it is, we are all in this together. And I do think that there's a lot of, if Chris in Rochester does better, then I do better in Lake Placid, because when people come from Rochester to Lake Placid, now they're seeking me out because he's making good beer in Rochester. So I still think that that's a big philosophy with all of us.
Drink NY, drink NY.
That's right.
All branded.
Any last thoughts, guys, before we end?
Just thank you. This has been a pleasure. Not usually comfortable in front of the camera, but it was a very welcoming group. So thank you.
You did great.
You did a really good job.
Yeah, you did a great
Yes,
job.
thanks, Eric.
Thank
It was
you,
awesome.
everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Chris,
Thank
Aaron,
you, everyone.
Everybody.
Have a great day.
Thank you to our
Thank you,
Thursday
too.
presenting sponsor, Hopsteiner, and also to our session sponsors, Stonebill Insurance Agency, BSG Craft Brewing, and DK Advanced Technologies. Thank you all so much, and I hope to see you at the next one, 5:30. Or no, 5:30, right?
5.
Chloe,
No,
did you?
5, sorry.
Chloe, did I catch you calling Glenn?
did I? No.